When I opened my eyes, I found that I had lost my memory. The good news was that I had married my college goddess, Victoria. The bad news was that before I lost my memory, I was a sycophant. I lost my memory after a failed attempt at ending my life. Furious, I slapped myself in the face in front of the mirror because I, Sincere, loathe sycophants more than anything. Just as I was racking my brain trying to understand why I would grovel to the point of attempting suicide for Victoria, Ethan, who claimed to be Victoria's true love, made his entrance. I couldn't be bothered to argue with him, so I slapped both of them and asked Victoria for a divorce. To my surprise, Victoria looked bewildered and asked, "Honey, since when did that fool become my true love?" "Boss V, your husband attempted suicide." When I woke up, the first thing I saw was a blinding white light. Before I could react, a sharp pain shot through my wrist. As I started to regain my senses, I heard an anxious female voice. Then, I saw a woman standing with her back to me, talking on the phone. She said, "Boss V, Sincere is in the hospital now. Do you want to come and see him?" A cold, emotionless voice responded from the other end. "Is he dead? If not, don't bother me." The call ended and the woman sighed. She turned around, looked stunned for a moment, then approached me and asked, "You're awake?" I asked, "Who are you?" I looked at her in confusion. "Are you talking to me?" She replied, "You don't recognize me?" Her expression changed and she said, "I'm Sarah, Boss V's assistant." I asked, "Who is Boss V?" Sarah frowned and looked at me with growing impatience. She said, "Sincere, Boss V is very busy with work. Even if you attempt suicide, it won't make a difference. Especially not if you claim to have amnesia. Give it up. Boss V won't come to see you." I was even more confused and had no idea what she was talking about. Seeing my silence, Sarah stepped closer and said earnestly, "Sincere, you've been married to Boss V for 5 years, and you've been causing trouble for 5 years. Boss V has never been able to love you. Don't you think it's time to reflect on yourself and stop causing trouble for Boss V?" Although I still didn't know what was happening, her demeanor made me very uncomfortable. Especially looking at her face, I felt a strange aversion. "Wait," I asked, "did you say 5 years?" I rushed into the bathroom attached to the hospital room and looked at myself in the mirror. It was still me, the same face, but more mature, with a hint of lingering melancholy. Could everything Sarah had said be true? Is it really 5 years later? Am I really married? It turned out to be true. I really was married, and for 5 years. I hadn't traveled through time or dreamed. I had lost my memory. My memories were still stuck at age 18, just entering college. I had a crush on an upperclassman named Victoria. She was an impeccable ice queen in terms of looks, family background, and abilities. She had skipped grades and, though she was my upperclassman, she was younger than me, and now I was married to her. According to Sarah, I married Victoria at 22 in a flash wedding without much emotional foundation. I hadn't even graduated from college at the time. We just got the marriage certificate without a wedding ceremony. After marriage, I found out that Victoria's heart wasn't with me, but rather close to her male best friend, Ethan, who was said to be her unattainable true love. As for me, unloved, I began to act out in our marriage, using all sorts of bizarre methods to attract Victoria's attention, only to make her increasingly disgusted with me. Her friends saw me as a joke, just waiting for the day we would divorce. Ethan, a young master in their circle, never took me seriously. My hysterical outbursts were no more than clownish antics to them. In the end, I used suicide to threaten Victoria, trying to make her cut off all contact with Ethan, but she refused. She even told me to go ahead and die, so I did. That's what happened before I woke up. It all felt surreal. Committing suicide for love was totally out of character for me. I despise groveling sycophants and would never become one for any woman. By the time I figured all this out, I was already in the master bedroom of our marital home. The doctor said I was fine, so Sarah sent me back home. Before leaving, she warned me sternly not to cause any more trouble. Looking at the enormous villa before me, I lost any desire to make a fuss. I was overwhelmed by the sheer opulence. Even a small walk-in closet was bigger than my old house. As I stood, dazzled by the sight of our bedroom, I heard a noise at the door. I turned sharply and locked eyes with Victoria, her face as cold as ice. Although I already knew we had been married for 5 years, it was my first time seeing her face up close. I had to admit, there was a reason she had been my goddess in my youth. Just having her face before me lifted my spirits, even if she looked at me with a cold expression. It seemed Sarah had some credibility. Maybe I really was captivated by her looks. Seeing me silent, she frowned slightly and said, "Sincere, what are you up to now?" She walked gracefully toward the walk-in closet, passing by me as she spoke. Her footsteps didn't stop for a moment as she picked out a nightgown. I turned to look at her and asked, "What's wrong?" From the moment she suddenly returned until now, I hadn't said a word. Yet she accused me of causing trouble. Victoria's dark eyes glared at me. She said, "When did you ever not pounce on me when I came back before? Now you're changing your tactics?" I was a bit surprised. Had I become this desperate since marrying Victoria? But I didn't show it on my face and just said calmly, "Fine, I won't do it anymore." I originally thought Victoria would be relieved, but unexpectedly her frown deepened and she looked at me even more impatiently. "I've been really tired from work lately and don't have time for your nonsense," she said. I was speechless. Seeing that I wasn't responding, Victoria's gaze suddenly turned cold. "Sincere, stop trying to do anything to Eddie. He hasn't done anything wrong. Even if you threaten me with suicide, it won't work." I was taken aback, feeling somewhat conflicted. Sarah had told me almost everything about what was going on between Victoria and me. Essentially, I loved Victoria. Victoria loved Ethan, and I, the clown in this love triangle, could only keep causing trouble for Ethan, which only made Victoria despise me more. This time, I attempted suicide because I was jealous of how much Victoria cared for Ethan. So I secretly tried to sabotage Ethan's company and smear their artists' reputations. Victoria, however, didn't hesitate to support him, essentially telling everyone in the circle that as Boss Fife's husband, I was insignificant, not even worth one of Ethan's fingers in her heart. So I lost my balance and tried to win Victoria back by threatening suicide. The result was predictable. A woman who was already fed up with me wouldn't change her mind because of my suicide. She would only find it troublesome. Seeing that I wasn't speaking, Victoria also lost patience, and I suddenly lost my appetite and said, "I'm not eating." The sound of silverware clinking against porcelain was crisp. Victoria looked up at me, her voice cold. "Sincere, that's enough." I was fuming inside. I gritted my teeth and said, "Not eating mangoes bothers you?" She replied, "Isn't it because Eddie brought them that you're not eating?" Victoria's face was icy. She said, "Sincere, when will you stop being so jealous?" Jealous of Ethan? I didn't know what the 27-year-old me was like in front of Victoria, probably pathetic and petty. But no matter what, we were still married. Didn't she know I was allergic to mangoes? Just as I was about to speak, the butler suddenly said, "Sir, Mr. Ethan is here." A gentle voice sounded, "Victoria, am I disturbing you?" At the door, a tall figure walked in. Both the butler and the housekeeper were very familiar with him. It was clear he visited often. Just one look and I knew this person was Ethan. I noticed the butler's form of address. I was Victoria's husband, yet he only called me Mr. Sincere while calling him Mr. Ethan. The level of familiarity was obvious. No wonder the 27-year-old me was so hostile toward Ethan. I was her legitimate husband but could never compare to her blatant favoritism towards another man. All under the guise of childhood friends. Anyone would feel unbalanced. Ethan looked at me with concern and said, "Mr. Sincere, I heard you tried to slit your wrists. Are you okay now?" I snorted dismissively at him. I didn't know what the 27-year-old me was like in front of them, maybe pathetic, or perhaps because I loved Victoria too much, I let them boss me around. But the current me was my 18-year-old self. I didn't love Victoria, so I didn't need to swallow my pride. Ethan, looking a bit troubled, said to Victoria, "Victoria, I'm sorry. Mr. Sincere seems not to want to see me. Maybe I shouldn't have come." I laughed. You knew that and still came? Here to see me make a fool of myself?" Ethan's face instantly turned red. Victoria coldly rebuked me. "Sincere, stop being unreasonable." She was defending Ethan. I felt displeased and my impression of her plummeted. Marrying my crush upon waking up had initially made me excited and grateful, but now it seemed Victoria was just so-so. No matter how beautiful or rich, she discarded her husband like trash, thinking it made her look impressive. If she had the guts, she shouldn't have married me in the first place. I was indignant. Ethan remained gentlemanly and calm. He said, "Victoria, I came specifically to invite you to my celebration party." After saying this, he seemed to realize it was inappropriate not to invite me since I was standing right there. Reluctantly, he said, "Mr. Sincere, you should come too." Initially, I didn't want to go, but seeing the hidden disdain and provocation in Ethan's eyes, I suddenly smirked and agreed. Sure, after all, I'm Victoria's husband. I should accompany her to social events. So I followed Victoria to Ethan's celebration party. When the three of us arrived, everyone in the private room looked over. Their expressions varied. Someone asked, "Why did Victoria bring him along?" Another replied, "Not surprising. Her husband is always making a scene, hostile to all the men around her, especially Eddie. I heard he even attempted suicide because of Eddie." Someone else chimed in, "Indeed. But he doesn't realize he's lucky to have married Victoria in the first place. Who is he to control her? Previous guys were one thing, but Eddie, how can he compare?" The voices were neither too loud nor too soft, just enough for me to hear. I glanced over, guessing they were either friends of Victoria or Ethan, all part of the same circle, no doubt. I sneered inwardly. No wonder the 25-year-old me wanted to die. Hearing such demeaning words every day, how could I not become twisted? And back then, I must have loved Victoria deeply, suffering daily to the point of wanting to end my life. Victoria and Ethan had already taken their seats, leaving me standing alone. The people in the room muttered, "Isn't it awkward for him to stand there alone?" Someone replied, "How could it be? As long as he's with Victoria, he'd even kneel." I coldly looked at the person gossiping. I laughed and said, "She's not dead. Why would I kneel?" The person's face changed, clearly not expecting me to talk back today. Victoria looked impatient. She said, "All right, everyone, stop it." I had been so insulted, yet she didn't defend me but only wanted to smooth things over. I sneered and said, "It seems I'm not welcome here. I won't disturb you any longer." With that, I turned and left. Behind me, I heard gasps. Someone said, "Did I see that right?" He actually showed Victoria an attitude. Another person said, "Could it be that Eddie really drove him mad? I bet he won't last half an hour before coming back with his tail between his legs." I was speechless. The noisy sounds behind me were extremely annoying. I went to the outdoor swimming pool to clear my head. Not long after, Ethan suddenly came out. He said, "Mr. Sincere, you really impress me." I glanced behind him, seeing he was alone, and retorted playfully, "I hate you so much. Aren't you afraid I'll push you in?" Ethan laughed and said, "I'm more afraid you wouldn't dare. After all, everyone knows Victoria will save me." I pursed my lips, too lazy to respond. Ethan walked up to me again and asked, "Sincere, do you dare to bet?" I found it strange and said, "If you two are so in love, why doesn't Victoria divorce me? Must you trample on others' sincerity to prove your deep love?" Ethan's face changed and he said, "Isn't it because you cling to her? You even attempted suicide just to hold on to Victoria. She just pities you." Soon, he regained his calm and gentle demeanor and asked again, "Sincere, do you dare to bet?" The swimming pool surface was shimmering, appearing clear but actually very deep. I shook my head decisively and said, "I don't dare." Ethan was speechless. "I can't swim. Attempting suicide once was enough. I wouldn't do such a stupid thing again." As soon as I stood up, I caught sight of Ethan's disappointed expression. He stood behind me and shoved me directly. With a splash, various screams reached my ears. My body hit the water and quickly sank. At that moment, I felt nothing but the terror of being engulfed by the pool water from all directions. My throat began to choke on water, and my lungs grew heavy. I struggled desperately to swim upwards, but all I saw was a familiar figure swimming quickly in the opposite direction. My wife, Victoria, swam towards Ethan as we both fell into the water. A sharp pain pierced my heart. This might be the last bit of emotion left in my 27-year-old self. Though I had long forgotten the past and no longer loved her, my body's instincts remained. But this time, even that was completely drowned. When I woke up, I was lying by the poolside. Both Ethan and I had been rescued, but he was saved by Victoria while I was saved by a stranger, a beautiful woman with a stunning figure. Lying on the ground, she was pressing on my chest, trying to expel the water I had swallowed. I coughed it up, and in my peripheral vision, I saw Victoria approaching. Ethan was still pretending to look at Victoria's back. Victoria seemed to just remember she had a husband and frowned, asking, "Are you all right?" I didn't answer, struggling to stand up. The woman next to me tried to help, but I pushed her away. When Victoria stood in front of me, I raised my hand and slapped her, then pushed her to the ground. The surroundings fell into dead silence. I could even hear everyone's deliberately slowed breathing. Victoria, a perfect and proud beauty, had probably never been touched by anyone, not even pushed aside. I said, "Victoria, let's get a divorce." After a long silence, I heard my own voice. "I don't want anything. Consider that slap as your breakup fee to me." I had imagined Victoria's reaction: anger, shock, disappointment, disgust. But whatever her reaction, it no longer mattered to me. Everything around was eerily quiet, even quieter than before. I could hear the water droplets from my body hitting the ground, and the slow breathing of the people around. They seemed very shocked that I, who had always been subservient to Victoria, had actually pushed her and even asked for a divorce. Victoria was silent for a long time, her beautiful face still bearing a clear red mark. She suddenly walked towards me and I felt repulsed, taking a step back. In that instant, Victoria's face grew even uglier, far worse than when I had pushed her. I said, "I already told you that slap was your breakup fee." I glared at her. "Victoria, don't tell me you don't have the dignity to take that." Victoria said nothing, her lips pressed tightly together. She grabbed my wrist, trying to drag me away. In the chaos, a slender hand held mine. The woman looked at me, then at Victoria, and instead of pulling my hand away, she smiled charmingly. "Victoria, he almost drowned just now. Let it go." It was the woman who had just saved me. She was also soaking wet and had a unique charm completely different from Victoria's cold, intelligent beauty. She was wild and alluring. I was momentarily lost in thought. Victoria seemed to notice and her face turned frighteningly dark, gripping my hand tightly. She said, "Emma, he is my husband. What right do you have to advise me?" Emma still wore her unrestrained expression and said, "I heard him say he wants a divorce." The atmosphere grew excessively tense. Emma, seeing the murderous intent in Victoria's eyes, smiled again and said, "Anyway, I just saved your husband's life. Shouldn't you thank me?" Victoria's expression finally softened a bit. She said, "I'll give you full control over the West Suburb project." After saying that, she pulled me away. I heard gasps behind me, seemingly in shock. The West Suburb project was a massive opportunity, and Victoria handed it to Emma just like that. It was a $1 billion project, and even the Ethan family only got a small share. Yet Victoria gave it all to Emma just because she saved Victoria's husband? No way. Didn't Victoria really dislike that country bumpkin? I was speechless as Victoria dragged me to the hotel room. She was very particular, never staying in a room others had used, so even in hotels a suite was always reserved for her on the top floor. She held my wrist without saying a word the entire way, leading me to the bathtub. The warm water enveloped me, and I couldn't help but say, "Victoria, can you leave?" She remained the same, cold and silent. Ever since I pushed her away, she had been like this. "No," she finally said in a hoarse voice. When I'd soaked enough, she suddenly came in. I didn't know what she wanted to do and was startled. The next second, I felt a weight on me. She was hugging me tightly. Victoria's arms wrapped around me like creeping vines, making it hard to breathe. Her delicate chin pressed against my head. I struggled a bit, and she held me even tighter. Just as my patience wore thin, I heard her restrained yet clear voice. "Sincere, I'm glad you're okay." My voice was icy as I replied, "Victoria, stop pretending. Emma was the one who saved me." How could she say something like that? I would never forget that when Ethan and I fell into the water at the same time, she ran towards him. Even though I had lost 5 years of memory and no longer loved her, my heart still felt a pang of instinctual pain, dull and suffocating, like drowning. I thought, that must have been my 27-year-old self making its final struggle. I'm glad I lost my memory. Otherwise, my 27-year-old self's love for Victoria might have killed me with pain. Victoria was at a loss for words. She opened her mouth as if to say something but didn't. "I can't swim." It's a fact that she saved Ethan. "If it weren't for Emma, I wouldn't be here safely now," she said. "I was wrong for that." After a long pause, Victoria finally said, "Sincere, this won't happen again." I replied, "It doesn't matter." I said calmly, "After the divorce, you can save whoever you want. It has nothing to do with me." Victoria tightened her grip around me. She said, "I know you're angry, but it's not what you think." She paused and then added, "About the divorce, I don't agree." I asked, "What right do you have to disagree? When Ethan and I fell into the water, you chose to save him without hesitation. That already put my life behind someone else's. I don't see any point in continuing this marriage. Besides, you chose him in front of so many people. Do I have no dignity, no self-respect? Victoria, I'm telling you, I will get this divorce." She seemed somewhat angry, but knew I had every reason to be upset, so she held back and didn't argue with me. After I got out of the bathtub and lay on the bed, she wouldn't leave me alone. She said, "Get some sleep. We'll talk about it tomorrow." I gritted my teeth and said, "Don't come near me, Victoria. Don't make me use force." Victoria sneered, "With your skills, you dare to use force on me." I gritted my teeth and tried to push her, but I touched the wrong place. Victoria's face changed, a blush appearing but quickly fading. She softened suddenly, kissed the corner of my mouth and said, "All right, stop it. I was wrong. I'll find a way to make it up to you." My head ached, my temples throbbing violently. I didn't know how low my 27-year-old self had sunk. Even after everything that happened, Victoria still thought she could placate me. What did she take me for? I clenched my fists and pushed her away without hesitation. Victoria's face turned sour. She suddenly covered me with her body, looking down at me. "If you can't sleep, then let's do something." Just as she was about to kiss the corner of my mouth, my face turned pale and sweat beaded on my forehead. I couldn't help but shout, trembling all over. Victoria seemed to snap out of it. She asked, "Did I hurt you somewhere?" In that moment, the panic in her eyes made me think she might actually care about me, but I quickly dismissed that notion. It was just wishful thinking. How could a woman who didn't even care about my life care about a wound on my wrist? I bit my lip hard, refusing to speak. Victoria seemed anxious. She asked, "Where exactly does it hurt? Tell me." Before I could answer, the air was filled with a faint scent of blood. Victoria looked at her tightly gripped wrist in a daze. It was still wrapped in bandages. She always thought I was just playing the victim, never considering that the wound was real. Her face turned serious as she slowly unwrapped my bandage. Translation error, segment 6. "I never imagined that you were serious about the divorce." With a teasing smile on her lips, she looked at me and said, "When you married Victoria, you were madly in love. No matter where she went, you had to stick to her. You couldn't stand any man around her, let alone Ethan." "Was I that crazy?" I asked. "More than that. Your possessiveness was overwhelming and you were incredibly humble, always afraid she would abandon you. But despite appearing to disdain you, she never thought of leaving you. You gave up all your old friends, especially the female ones, after you married her. We went through so much together in college, and even though I confessed my feelings and you rejected me, we still had our friendship. Yet you cut off all contact. It was only after I joined Victoria's circle post-graduation that I could see you occasionally, but you pretended not to know me. She said a lot, and I suddenly understood our relationship. So that's how it was. She was a classmate I met after I turned 18. No wonder I had no memory of her from before then. After I met Emma, she confessed her feelings, I rejected her, and then I met Victoria. We had a whirlwind wedding, and after marrying her, I became a laughingstock, losing all my dignity. My love for her was incredibly humble, to the point that I severed ties with all my old friends. Emma had no choice but to infiltrate Victoria's circle to talk to me. I said, "So you must know a lot about me." My eyes lit up. I had amnesia and wasn't clear about my current situation, not even knowing what my job entailed. Having her around would make things much easier. I didn't want Victoria to know about my amnesia. It would complicate matters. Time passed quickly, and although I didn't say anything, Emma seemed to sense my trouble. She didn't pry, but instead recounted my situation over the past 2 years. I understood more or less and couldn't help but feel sentimental. The 27-year-old me could really love someone to such an extent, something the 18-year-old me couldn't even imagine. Gaining 9 years out of nowhere and becoming the kind of sycophant I once despised was hard to accept. Just as Emma and I were laughing and chatting, a familiar voice suddenly came from nearby. "Wasn't that Sincere? Why was he with Emma?" "It must be because Emma saved him yesterday and he's here to thank her," someone said, then realized out loud. I believed Sincere wasn't the type to meet women privately. When I turned around, I saw Victoria standing in front of us with Ethan by her side. Victoria looked at me coldly and said, "I remember telling you before that I don't like you being with her." I frowned and said, "We're getting a divorce. It's none of your business." I couldn't believe I had cut off all my friends just because Victoria didn't like it. Maintaining basic social boundaries was one thing, but why should I have no female friends at all? Victoria looked at Emma expressionlessly and said, "You saved my husband yesterday, and I thanked you with the West Side Project. There's no need for private meetings." Emma smiled faintly, her expression somewhat provocative. "Yesterday you thanked me as his wife, but today I'm accepting his thanks as his friend. Please don't confuse the two." The atmosphere instantly became tense. I really didn't want to see them in a standoff. I grabbed my coat and said, "Emma, let's go somewhere else." Victoria immediately grabbed my arm, looking at me coldly, and asked, "Where are you going?" I said, "What's it to you?" Glancing at Ethan behind her, I added, "Why don't you go be with your man? Send me the divorce papers quickly, or else he'll always be a hidden affair." Victoria opened her mouth as if she wanted to say something, but I didn't want to hear it. I shook off her hand and left with Emma. By evening, I returned home. This unfamiliar world was still so foreign to me. I needed to find a place to stay in the next few days, because I wouldn't know where to go once the divorce was finalized. Victoria saw me come in and approached me coldly. "You still know how to come back," she said in a questioning tone that irritated me. I frowned and said, "Can you stop staring at me? I just went out with a friend. What's it to you?" As soon as I said it, a sharp pain shot through my temples, and blurry fragments flashed in my mind. I took a step back and gripped the sofa handle tightly. It felt like I had heard this phrase before. I suddenly looked up at her, my eyes bloodshot. I remembered a clear image in my mind of Victoria saying the exact same words to me before. She had gone out for social engagements and came back late. When I questioned her, she would brush me off with the same impatient tone. Now I returned those words to her verbatim. Victoria seemed to recall something as well, her lips pressed tightly together in silence. After a long pause, she explained, "Meeting Ethan isn't what you think. Our families are old friends. Some things can't be avoided, but I'm already reducing my interactions with him." "You don't need to do this," I interrupted her. "If you feel guilty for not saving me when I fell into the water and don't want a divorce to make amends, there's no need at all." I shook my head and said, "You might as well give me more compensation when we divorce." After that day, Victoria and I had another unpleasant parting. I couldn't understand why she didn't want a divorce. Clearly, she loved Ethan and was disgusted with me. Wouldn't divorce be exactly what she wanted? I couldn't figure her out, nor did I want to. The next day I found a way to move out. When Victoria returned home and discovered this, she immediately called me. "Sincere, what do you mean by this?" she asked. "What do you mean, what do I mean? We're getting a divorce, we can't still live together, can we? Get the paperwork done as soon as possible." I hadn't finished speaking when she hung up on me. I tossed my phone on the table, not wanting to deal with it. Just as I finished tidying up, someone knocked on the door. I thought it was a delivery, but when I opened the door, I saw Victoria standing there, barely containing her anger. My face changed instantly. "What are you doing here? No, how did you know I was here?" Victoria walked in, glanced around the modest apartment, and said, "You'd rather live in this dump just to be separated from me?" Taking a deep breath, I replied, "Victoria, I'm not throwing a tantrum. I really want a divorce. Things have come to this point, and I don't understand why. Why don't you want a divorce? Isn't this what you wanted?" She said, "When did I ever say I wanted a divorce?" Victoria looked at me as if I were unreasonable. "Are you still mad about Ethan?" Her eyes darkened as she said, "I thought you understood. I didn't intentionally not save you that day." Seeing me stand there coldly, refusing to answer, she suddenly sighed, grasped my shoulders, and made me sit on the couch. "Sincere, stop being childish. Come home with me. This won't happen again." So many things had already happened before. Wasn't it too late to try to fix things now? I pushed her hand away and said, "No need, just get the divorce papers ready." Victoria suddenly cupped my face. "Sincere, do you have to be so stubborn?" "I told you I'm not being stubborn. Do you really want to sleep alone in a place like this?" "What else?" Victoria suddenly bit my earlobe and coyly said, "Honey, come home with me. You won't be able to sleep alone in a place like this." I found it funny. Maybe for a princess like you this place is simple, but for me it's already great. It's also close to where I work. Victoria sighed. "Do I have to spell it out? Sincere, you can't sleep without me." I widened my eyes as if hearing something shocking. "I can't sleep without you?" Since I lost my memory and woke up, it seemed like Victoria and I were a pair of doomed lovers. I loved her, but she was annoyed with me. But why did it now seem like we were a loving couple who just bickered? Victoria wanted to say something more, but I pulled her up and pushed her toward the door. "Victoria, I've decided to divorce you. I can't live like this for another day." After kicking Victoria out, I started setting up my apartment. I had almost caught up with the work at the company, which took a lot of time. In the evening, I thought about ordering takeout and checked my social media. A photo posted by Ethan caught my eye. It was a picture of him and Victoria, though discreetly taken, only showing her profile. Even just a half-silhouetted profile of her beautiful face was instantly recognizable. Ethan had also posted a cryptic message, "If we hadn't missed each other, wouldn't the man by your side be me? But fortunately, it's not too late. We have time to fix everything." I let out a cold laugh. Wasn't this just implying that Victoria being with me lacked love, and that we would eventually divorce so she could be with him? I liked the post and commented with a 99 before deleting him completely. I also found Victoria's number and blocked all her contacts. The next day I went to work, and Victoria was already downstairs with a sullen face waiting for me. As soon as she saw me, she walked over quickly and asked, "Did you block me?" "Sorry," I admitted straightforwardly. "I shouldn't have blocked you." Victoria's expression softened a bit. I added, "Forget it. We haven't divorced yet. Are you here to get me to sign the divorce papers? Since I need to take leave, we can sign them and then go to the civil registry to get the divorce certificate." Victoria's face darkened instantly. "Sincere, add my number back." "No," I replied. Her tone suddenly softened. "Honey, I'm sorry. Please add my number back." I rolled my eyes. "I don't even remember your number." Her expression changed suddenly. "You don't remember my number?" "Yes," I said. "Why?" She grabbed my shoulder firmly, seeming to just realize something was off. "How could you forget my number? You always knew it by heart." Damn, my heart skipped a beat. She noticed. I averted my eyes immediately and said, "I just forgot it." "So what? We're getting a divorce anyway. Can't I forget your number? Sincere, what happened to you? Ever since you woke up after your suicide attempt, you've been like a different person. Afraid she might figure something out, I shook off her hand. Isn't that normal? After going through such a major event, people are bound to change. Do you still expect me to be the same as before, following you around like a shadow, always humble, always without self-respect? Victoria looked at me, a flicker of danger in her eyes, ignoring my perfunctory words. She grabbed my phone, skillfully unlocked it, and found the password was incorrect. She frowned. You changed the password? Yes, so what? I replied. It used to be my birthday, she said coldly, a hint of hurt in her eyes. I really didn't want to argue with her. Victoria, give me back my phone. I need to take leave. If you want, I can buy the whole company for you. Is it necessary to go to work? She tried several passwords, mumbling our wedding anniversary as she entered. Incorrect. She bit her lip and tried my birthday, which finally worked. She gave me a long look, said nothing, and changed the password to our wedding anniversary. I snatched the phone back, tried to unlock it, but it wouldn't work. Frustrated, I yelled, Victoria, what right do you have to change my password? The password is our wedding anniversary. You can change it back, she said. I was stunned. How could I remember our wedding anniversary? I had amnesia. My understanding of her was just a long-ago crush. Now that I knew her true nature, her beautiful face, hot body, and wealth didn't appeal to me at all. I would never actively learn these trivial details. You forgot, didn't you? Her eyes were like an eagle's, trying to see through me. She gripped my shoulder tightly. You have amnesia, she said with absolute certainty. Indeed, I did have amnesia. Victoria discovered it, and the divorce process slowed down. She knew I had amnesia and had more reasons not to divorce me. You just don't remember. It's not that you don't love me anymore, she said. Sincere, once you remember, you won't want to divorce me. Her words made me extremely uncomfortable. I was also afraid that if I remembered, I would turn back into the 27-year-old humble Sincere. That version of me was too pathetic. So I would rather never remember. Returning home from work, I opened the door and was about to put my bag on the sofa when I saw a shadow sitting there, looking up at me. Sincere, she called my name. I was startled. When did you get here? Wait, how did you get the key to my apartment? I contacted the landlord, Victoria answered. Give me the key. I'll change the locks tomorrow, I said impatiently. She said nothing, just looked at me with a complex expression. How much did you forget? I didn't forget, I said impatiently. I'm divorcing you because I don't love you anymore. How many times do I have to say it? Before I could finish, Victoria grabbed my arm and hugged my waist tightly. She buried her face in my waist. This position was somewhat dangerous, but Victoria seemed to have no other thoughts, just wanting to lean on me. Don't say that. You have amnesia. I won't hold it against you, she said hoarsely. When you remember, we'll settle the score. I looked at her impatiently. The tension had reached its peak. Victoria, are you ever going to stop? You don't love me at all. You're never good to me. Why should I stay with you? Even if I lost my memory, so what? I don't like being the person who blindly follows you around. Losing myself. I prefer who I am now. I don't love you anymore. Do you understand? I've wanted to leave you for a long time. I've wanted to leave her for a long time. Realizing this, Victoria held me tighter. She said, no, we're just having a fight, Sincere. I've already explained it to you. That time it wasn't on purpose. She held my face and said, I didn't want to bring this up because I thought we understood each other the best. Even if I saved Ethan at that time, you should understand it must have been a misunderstanding. She rubbed her forehead against mine and sighed softly. Now that you have amnesia and don't remember me, I feel it's necessary to explain. There's nothing between Ethan and me as you think. The Liu family and the Ito family have been friends for generations. His grandfather once did a favor for my grandfather. We were engaged as children, but I never had any romantic feelings for him. Later, I married you. My grandfather felt guilty towards him, so he asked me to take care of him. There's nothing more to it. I sneered. Who would believe that? You value his life more than mine. Victoria poked my cheek and sighed. It seems like you're still upset about that incident. I'm sorry. I didn't know you had amnesia then. I should have explained it to you right away. I didn't want to hear her explanations, but Victoria insisted. She held me tightly, and I couldn't move, so I had to listen. That day, I heard someone fall into the water. My first reaction was to see if you were okay. They said it was Ethan, so I was relieved. But he was someone my grandfather treated as his own grandson, so I saved him. I didn't realize you had also fallen into the water. These simple words seemed to absolve her of any responsibility. Seeing my expression of disbelief, she was silent for a long time and said, "You don't believe me, do you?"
Why should I believe you?
I looked at her coldly. Everyone saw it. You rushed over without thinking. You saved him, and it had nothing to do with me. After Emma saved me, you were still so cold towards me. Victoria, I'm not blind. I can feel your indifference towards me. Feeling wronged, Victoria hugged me gently this time, unlike before. Her touch was surprisingly tender. It was the first time she showed weakness in front of me. She said, "Sincere, I wasn't being cold to you. I was angry because you almost died." Victoria said in a low voice, "If you hadn't been okay, I might have wanted to kill someone." I shook my head and said, "Victoria, if you really care about me, divorce me, let me go, let me be truly free." She refused, "Except for this, only this can't happen." Victoria still didn't dare to let go. She whispered in my ear, "Let's talk about the divorce when you remember everything." I said, "Do you think I won't want a divorce once I remember?" Victoria didn't answer, but it was clear that's what she thought. I sneered, "It's useless, Victoria. If fate made me forget, it means I shouldn't remember. Maybe this is my chance to leave you. I resist remembering and don't want to go back to being my year-old self." Victoria had no choice but to temporarily pacify me. I lived normally for a few days, never expecting Ethan would find me. "Sincere, let's talk." Ethan looked somewhat haggard this time, with deep, dark circles under his eyes. He was waiting for me outside my office building. Not wanting to make a scene, I said, "If you have something to say, say it quickly." Ethan suddenly laughed sarcastically. "You're quite pleased with yourself, aren't you? Victoria unilaterally terminated the cooperation with our family. Now everyone in the circle knows the Ito family has lost its backing." I frowned, genuinely surprised, but I replied calmly, "What does that have to do with me? You should talk to her." Ethan gritted his teeth, "But she said she wouldn't help me. Did you say something to her?" I grew impatient. "I thought you came to genuinely apologize. It seems it's just for your own benefit. We have nothing to talk about." I turned to leave, but Ethan suddenly shouted sharply behind me, "Why can a country bumpkin like you be her husband? Why can you marry her? What makes you better than me?" My steps halted abruptly. The sharp ringing in my ears made it hard to think. It felt like I had heard these words before, shortly after I married Victoria. Her wealthy friends mocked me. At that time, Ethan was relatively friendly to me, even understanding, giving me a lot of advice. But his advice often made me embarrass myself in front of others. I started to become timid, walking on eggshells and paranoid, fearing that Victoria would abandon me. The scenes flashed before my eyes, confirming they were my memories, though they hadn't fully returned. I could only see fragments. Ethan came running after me. He said, "Sincere, I can apologize to you, but you must tell Victoria. Get lost." I shook off his hand, my eyes red with fury. "I have no interest in your affairs with Victoria. Please tell her I never want to see you two again. Stay as far away from me as possible." Just as I was about to leave, I bumped into a familiar figure. The woman said, "How do we always run into each other in these situations? Right, Victoria?" It was Emma's voice. I didn't have time to react before someone else pulled me away. When I came to my senses, Victoria was already beside me. She glared coldly at Emma and said, "Stay away from him." Emma shrugged helplessly. "I didn't do anything to him. Why are you so tense?" She then smiled and looked at Ethan, who was standing not far away with a grim face. "Why do you always bother Sincere in private?" Ethan gritted his teeth. "He's the one troubling me." Ethan's face softened slightly when he saw Victoria. Victoria, no matter what, we've known each other since we were kids. We grew up together. What happened before was just a misunderstanding. Can't you just let it go? Victoria answered coldly. I've done everything I should. I owe you nothing. I only took care of you out of respect for your grandfather, but that doesn't mean you can be insatiable. Ethan, looking increasingly upset, found himself unable to argue back. He clenched his fists and gave me a hateful glare before turning to leave. Only after he was gone did I understand why he had been so eager to find me today. It turned out Victoria had made the pool incident public. She said, "There was never a choice between Ethan and me. I would always save you. At that time, I didn't know you were also in the water, so I saved Ethan. If I had known you were in the water, there would have been no need to choose. I would only save you." Her words were blunt, almost entirely negating Ethan's importance to her. This incident had been a source of ridicule for me in our circle. Everyone thought my wife didn't care about my life. They were all waiting to see when I'd be abandoned. But I never expected such a dramatic reversal. People were watching Victoria's attitude, and her words were like publicly backing me up, disgracing Ethan. No wonder he was so upset and came rushing to find me. It seemed not only his interests were harmed, but his carefully maintained image had also taken a hit. But I didn't understand. If Victoria had no extra feelings for him, why had I considered Ethan a rival all these years? The fragmented images reappeared before my eyes, and my head throbbed with a dull pain. I couldn't help but shake my head. Seeing this, Victoria's eyes flashed with concern. She immediately supported me and said, "Are you feeling unwell? Let me take you to the hospital." "I'm not going," I shook off her hand. "Just keep Ethan away from me and out of my business," she said. "Don't worry, I won't give him another chance." Victoria said sternly, "I won't make such a mistake again." Emma, still standing nearby, suddenly said, "You can choose not to make mistakes again, but not all mistakes can be forgiven." I felt she was right and deeply agreed. Victoria, however, looked at her coldly and said, "The project in the western suburbs has already been given to you as a thank you for saving him. Don't push your luck." Emma laughed. "After all, I saved him. I'm his savior. He can't swim. If I hadn't acted that day, you wouldn't have a husband now. What kind of attitude is this to have towards your savior?" Victoria's eyes flashed with cold light. "How do you know he can't swim?" Emma's expression showed a rare hint of mischief. "What do you think?" she sighed. "Since you two are getting divorced, I won't hide it anymore. I knew him long ago and confessed my feelings to him, but then he fell for you." She clicked her tongue and looked at me. "Sincere, if you think you made the wrong choice and were blind then, I can still give you another chance." Almost instantly, Victoria lunged at her, and they began to fight fiercely. I had never seen the usually cold and indifferent Victoria so emotionally charged. I had also never seen women fight. I had no interest in breaking up their fight. Childish people. I shook my head and went straight back to the office. To my surprise, Victoria was faster than me. When I reached the office building, she was already there, a bruise on her lip. When she saw me, her eyes lit up. She said she'd come to pick me up after work. I looked at the scars on her face. Victoria seemed a bit uneasy, avoiding my gaze. She said, "Don't worry, I'm not really hurt. She's the one who got injured more seriously." I scoffed, "Who told you I was worried about you? Don't flatter yourself." Victoria's expression darkened, but she still said, "I'll come to pick you up after work." I was already a bit impatient. I said I want a divorce. Which part of that don't you understand? Victoria's expression suddenly looked hurt, and she lowered her voice. "Sincere, you're suffering from amnesia now, so you don't remember your feelings for me. It'll be fine once you remember." I responded, "Why should I want to remember? Just because you and Ethan are innocent. But all those past hurts were real. My determination to divorce you won't change. Or do you think once I remember, I'll go back to being as humble and lowly as before? That I'd forgive you with just a beckoning finger?" She replied, "I never thought that." Victoria's voice was a bit hoarse. Seeing her like this, I suddenly felt a sense of helplessness. I looked earnestly into her eyes and said, Victoria, when I first woke up and lost all my memories, I was terrified. When I found out you were my wife, I was happy because I already knew you and thought you were a good person. Victoria, I've always had hopes for marriage, thinking I would marry a very kind wife, but I never imagined my future wife would be someone like. I'm disappointed in you, and also in myself. I've always despised those who grovel in relationships, yet I allowed you to hurt me under the guise of love, to the point where I didn't even recognize myself. Since I woke up with amnesia, I've never felt love from you, only perfunctory gestures and impatience. Even if you and Ethan are innocent, it doesn't matter. You never fulfilled your duties as a wife. You let him hurt me, and you hurt me too. I don't think there's any need to continue this marriage. Let's get a divorce. I spoke at length, saying everything on my mind. At that moment I seemed to see a certain light shattering in Victoria's eyes. I turned away without looking at her again. After that day, I refused to hear any more news about Victoria. The people in that circle always fawned over the powerful and trampled the weak. After knowing what happened last time, they began to inquire about me. Some tried to curry favor with me, but I ignored them, just doing my own thing, waiting for the day Victoria would agree to a divorce. At the end of the workday, I stretched lazily. I was planning to invite Emma for dinner to formally thank her. Just as I stepped out of the office, I saw a black luxury car parked there. Colleagues around were whispering and winking at me. I couldn't show any displeasure, so I forced a smile. I saw Victoria leaning against the car door, her figure striking and her face attracting attention wherever she went. I cursed inwardly and walked past her without a glance. Victoria immediately approached me, calling sincere in an unprecedentedly gentle tone. I frowned, having little patience for her. I asked, "Are you here to deliver the divorce papers?" Her smile froze for a moment, but she quickly recovered, deliberately changing the subject, and pulled out a car key from somewhere. She said, "Sincere, do you like it?" Immediately, gasps of admiration rose around me. They were all familiar colleagues. Due to my amnesia, I hadn't dared to get too close to them. I didn't expect Victoria to make such a cliché move. I instinctively replied, "I don't like off-road vehicles." That's what I said, but when I saw the car key, my heart leapt with joy. I was surprised to realize I liked off-road vehicles, because the 18-year-old me didn't like off-road at all. I liked sports cars. More and more people gathered to watch, making me uncomfortable. I urged Victoria to leave, but she stood her ground. I had no choice but to pull her aside and say, "Let's talk in private." Victoria led me into the car. By the time I realized it, I was already seated in a restaurant. She said, "Have dinner with me." Victoria looked at me with a somewhat desolate expression. I frowned and said, "After this meal, will you agree to divorce me?" Victoria remained silent for a long time before saying, "If you don't have dinner with me, I won't agree to the divorce." "All right, you said it." I picked up the knife and fork. It seemed meticulously prepared, with wine, candles, and various floral arrangements. It was the kind of romantic Western meal that didn't really fill you up but looked beautiful. I finished quickly, wiped my mouth, and said, "I'm full. I'm leaving." As I stood up, Victoria looked at me with hurt in her eyes and asked, "Sincere, did you forget what day it is today?" "What day?" I paused. Victoria suddenly tightened her grip on the knife and fork, and after a while she said with some sadness, "Today is our wedding anniversary." Wedding anniversary. I had no memory of it at all. After searching for a long time, I found that I couldn't remember how we used to live. Seeing her looking so despondent, I held back my urge to mock her and said calmly, "Well, it's not so bad. Let's consider it our last supper." She remained silent, a shadow cast beneath her eyes. From my angle, her delicate features looked even more beautiful. I understood her desire to salvage our marriage, but I really didn't think there was anything left to save. "Sorry, I need to use the bathroom," I said and turned to leave. The bathroom had a large mirror. I turned on the faucet, letting the cold water splash my face, calming my emotions. Staring at my reflection, I told myself not to look back. I slapped my face to wake myself up and turned to leave, only to see Victoria walking towards me. Her eyes were deep, filled with an emotion I couldn't decipher. Sincere, please try to remember. Before I could react, my back hit the wall behind me. She kissed me, her arms wrapped around my waist, clinging to me like a vine. Her kisses were gentle, but her actions were desperate. Victoria, stop it, I said. I didn't know how long it lasted, but soon I was enveloped in her sweet scent, yet all I wanted was to push her away. Victoria, it's no use. I knew her persistence was because of my amnesia. She believed that if I remembered, I wouldn't want to divorce her. But it was useless. I knew myself well. Even if I lost my memory and stopped loving her, I could feel that even if I remembered, I would still want a divorce. As I finished speaking, I saw a panic on her face that I had never seen before. She gripped my hand tightly, her fingers intertwined with mine, causing me some pain. No, Sincere. You love me. We love each other. You just forgot, she said. Love? I found it somewhat amusing. I took a sudden step back, hitting my head against the wall, causing sharp pain. My face turned pale from the pain. Sincere, what's wrong? Are you okay? Victoria asked, her voice filled with concern. I pushed her away, enduring the pain. I'm fine, don't touch me, I said. Victoria could only stand there, softly holding me, unwilling to let go yet not wanting to confine me. Her breath was close, her kisses passionate. My whole body weakened under her assault, powerless to resist. But at that moment, the pain at the back of my head brought forth clear images before my eyes. My body wobbled, and Victoria protected my head while kissing me even more intimately. In such a situation, those fragmented memories became increasingly coherent until they turned into unmistakably clear recollections. I remembered our first time, how we got together, how we got married. I also remembered how Ethan and the others mocked me, how I embarrassed myself in front of her parents, how I was ridiculed by Victoria's friends. I remembered how we fought because of Ethan, so that's how it was. My heart ached dully. All the past pains were laid bare before me, inescapable even with amnesia. Our first time was pretty cliché. At a party, she got drunk, and I had a bit too much to drink as well. She looked into my eyes, drunkenly asking me to take her to her room. I didn't know who initiated it, but by the time I realized, she was already in my arms. I was so nervous I could barely breathe. Even though it was her first time too, she gripped the bedsheet in panic. Yet in the blink of an eye, she turned back into that unattainable ice queen. The next morning when she saw me, she simply said, "Let's date." I had secretly liked her for years, so I naturally agreed. We fell into a passionate relationship like any normal couple, but we both had strong possessive desires for each other. She said she didn't want me to get too close to my female friends, and I didn't want her to have any special relations with other men. We were loyal to each other, but Ethan's appearance disrupted this balance. She said he was someone her grandfather treated like a grandson, and she couldn't be too cold to him. She had her reasons, but I couldn't accept it. After marrying her, I felt inferior because of my background. She came from a wealthy family, while I was just an ordinary man who happened to get into a prestigious university and met her. Otherwise, with my status, I wouldn't have had a chance to meet someone like her. Ethan was a rich young master from her circle. Even though she told me his family had fallen and needed her help, his status still loomed over me. Even if he had fallen, he was still a rich second generation that I had to look up to. These disparities made me unlike myself. I became unreasonable, checking her phone and restricting her interactions with any men, even her colleagues and subordinates. I knew those people were. It was innocent, but my emotions had already spiraled out of control by then. I couldn't control myself. All those sweet memories from the past had vanished, leaving only our constant arguments and the scenes where I was ridiculed for not fitting into her circle. I remember our last argument very well. She told me she didn't want children. I questioned her, "What if you do get pregnant? What if we have a child? Could you ignore Ethan?" Victoria looked at me with extreme disappointment in her eyes and said, You think a child is just a tool for you to solidify your status. I would rather never get pregnant. Even if I did, I would have an abortion." Her heartless words left me in utter despair. At that time, everyone in our circle was saying that even if Ethan's family went bankrupt, Victoria would help them. I begged her not to, but Victoria went ahead anyway. The double blow was too much for me to bear. I threatened her, saying I would kill myself if she went. I had threatened suicide. Victoria saw us hugging and felt so disgusted she almost threw up. "No, it's not that. I'm just not feeling well," she stammered, her tone pained. Suddenly, something seemed to dawn on her. I exchanged a glance with Emma, whose face also darkened as she quickly turned to the clearly uncomfortable Victoria and asked, "You don't think?" Victoria's eyes lit up as if she had also thought of that possibility. "The baby!" I shook my head vehemently. "That's impossible." I closed my eyes, feeling dizzy. Suddenly, I was reminded of the time I wanted to end my life because Victoria had told me she didn't want the baby and would get rid of it if she was pregnant. Seeing my reaction, Victoria immediately disregarded her discomfort and stepped forward, choking back tears. Sincere. I was already annoyed and didn't want to face the possibility of her being pregnant. Feeling irritated, I said, "I don't want to see you anywhere except for the divorce papers." Victoria wiped her mouth and dejectedly took out another car key. "You don't like the SUV, how about the sports car?" "I don't like it either." I looked at her coldly and said, "I don't like anything that's yours." Her eyes turned red with emotion. "You don't like the SUV, don't like the sports car, the house, the shares, anything I have I can give to you. I have no other options left," she pleaded. "No matter how much we fight, I don't want a divorce." Not wanting to be a spectacle on the street, I directly grabbed her arm and pulled her into the car. As we drove, her face grew paler. I sighed and asked stiffly, "Are you okay?" Victoria immediately straightened up and shook her head. "I'm fine." She touched her belly, looking hopeful. I was at a loss for words. After a while, I calmed down, took a deep breath, and said calmly, "Victoria, you don't have to do this. I don't blame you anymore. Except for the fact that you saved Eddie, which hurt me deeply. I've come to terms with everything else. We're just not suited for each other. You never made me feel secure, and I lacked confidence, which made me paranoid and did many things that annoyed you. So, it's not entirely your fault. We've both contributed to the mess we're in now." I couldn't help but laugh at myself. Although I didn't want to see Victoria, the person I used to be was even more annoying. I was obsessed with her, seeing nothing else but our love. Such a person lacked charm, and even I didn't like myself. Why would Victoria? "I didn't dislike you," she said hoarsely. "I was indeed impatient, but I never thought about divorcing you. I believed that even with all our arguments, we'd spend our lives together. But I don't want to live like that anymore," I replied, shaking my head. "Eddie was just a trigger. The real issue is that we're from different worlds. I can't trust you and you can't unconditionally accommodate me. Over time, we'll get exhausted and new problems will arise. Victoria, we're adults now. Let's not be childish." As the black Cullinan drove away, I insisted that Victoria not take me home. Standing downstairs, watching her receding figure, I sighed. If she really is pregnant. I have thin family ties. Even with my parents, our bond isn't deep. After their divorce, each started their own new families. Meeting Victoria, I always wanted a harmonious, perfect family of 3. I clung to her like a lifeline, but the tighter I held, the faster she slipped away. I've always wanted a child, so when she said she didn't want one, I lost all hope in her. I thought that even if Victoria didn't want the child, as long as she gave birth, I could raise it alone. But she gave me no hope at all. I should be as ruthless as her, but when I think about my own blood, I can't be heartless. It was a day off today. After a brain checkup at the hospital, I was heading home with the report when I suddenly saw a long-lost face on the street. "Sincere, what's that in your hand?" Ethan appeared out of nowhere, startling me. I instinctively shoved the report into my bag. "What's it to you? It's none of your business." I was cautious because Ethan looked far from normal. He seemed haggard, his eyes vacant, and even his clothes were disheveled, as if he'd been through something catastrophic. Seeing my evasive look, he lunged to grab my report, but in his crazed state, he was no match for me. Suddenly he screamed, "Do you know Victoria's pregnant? She's carrying your child. Why? Why did I lose everything while you get to have her pregnant? I was the privileged one. I was her childhood friend. How can you, a newcomer, take her away from me?" "What? Victoria's really pregnant." I was feeling a mix of emotions, hardly paying attention to Ethan's outburst. He shouted, "Why? Why?" I replied, "If you have any issues, go directly to Victoria. It has nothing to do with me." Taking a step back, I didn't want to hear his nonsense. This matter should be handled by Victoria. I used to be so naive, always thinking that as long as I was by her side, no man would ever change his heart. But for a woman like her, it's so easy to change her mind. There was no need to waste my time warning other men. It was simply a waste of energy. He asked, "Are you mocking me?" Ethan suddenly laughed maniacally, took a step forward, and stared at me intensely. "You know she completely stopped collaborating with the Ito family, making me a laughingstock in the circle. Now she can't help me, so you're mocking me, right?" I frowned, took a step back, and was about to turn and leave when Ethan blocked my path again. He said, "You told her about everything, didn't you?" "What are you talking?" Ethan's voice broke. "I was blind before." Her mother-in-law spoke with hatred. "I did like you before. I watched you grow up and thought I knew you well. But matters of the heart cannot be forced. My daughter doesn't like you, and I can't force her to be with you. Even if I think Sincere isn't the right person for her, at least his heart is good. As it turns out, Victoria's judgment is better than mine." Her mother-in-law spoke with deep sorrow. "I know everything you've done. Out of respect for your grandfather, we didn't hold it against you. But I never expected you to get worse, to come up with such cruel schemes. If anything happens to Victoria, you'll never have peace in this life." Saying this, she called Victoria's father, who was already on his way. She even instructed him not to let Ethan's family off easily, telling them that all this was Ethan's doing. Ethan collapsed to the ground, wailing like a madman. Her mother-in-law shook her head in pain. "You were spoiled at home, never properly taught, and that's why you've ended up like this." Ethan continued to scream hysterically. I didn't want to hear a word they said. I just watched the door of the operating room, hoping Victoria would be okay. When the light of the operating room turned off, my eyes lit up, and I immediately said to the two people next to me, "Be quiet, the surgery is over." Her mother-in-law immediately closed her mouth and gestured for the bodyguards to drag Ethan away. She gave me a look, and we both understood without words we were not on the same level, and our relationship was far from harmonious. But there was mutual respect. The doctor came out, and we both stepped forward to ask, "How is she?" The doctor sighed. "She is being stitched up now. Her condition will depend on her will to survive." His words were vague, but both her mother-in-law and I understood his meaning. After a long silence, Victoria was moved to a VIP room for observation. Her mother-in-law and I walked in without saying a word, perhaps too exhausted to speak. Her mother-in-law's eyes were red, completely devoid of the authority she had when dealing with Ethan. At the end of the day, she was just a worried mother. I sat by the bed, looking at Victoria's tightly closed eyes, unable to hold back. "I'm sorry." My voice was hoarse and choked with emotion. Her mother-in-law ignored me. After a while, she said, "It's a lie to say I don't blame you, but I know it's Ethan's fault." "I understand, Mom," I whispered. "No matter what, I will take good care of Victoria." Her mother-in-law sighed. "I know about the divorce. I didn't like you before, but I never made things difficult for you, even defending you in front of others. But Sincere, confidence comes from within. If you don't believe you're good enough, always hesitant and afraid, how can anyone else think you're worthy?" Victoria's parents only had this one daughter, and most of the time, they respected her personal choices. After Victoria and I got married, she had a heart-to-heart talk with them, asking them not to interfere too much, and they agreed. Her mother-in-law had never spoken to me so openly before. I nodded heavily but said nothing. Victoria's father soon arrived, his face stern, telling her mother-in-law that everything had been taken care of, and now they just had to wait for Victoria to wake up. We stayed the night. Her mother-in-law said to me, "You must be tired, go home and rest." I shook my head. "It's okay, I'm young. You go home first." Her mother-in-law frowned, about to say something, but my head suddenly felt dizzy, the world spinning, and then everything went black. When I woke up again, I was lying on a bed next to Victoria's. Her mother-in-law anxiously asked, "How do you feel? Is there anything uncomfortable?" I said, "No." I shook my head. "How long did I sleep?" "Not long. The doctor said you were exhausted and needed rest." I nodded, but noticed her mother-in-law's complicated expression. I asked in confusion, "Is there something else?" Her mother-in-law sighed. "Did you know Victoria is pregnant?" I instinctively bit my lip, not knowing how to respond. I didn't want them to know. If they knew Victoria was carrying my child, they would definitely want her to keep it. After all, they needed an heir. After our divorce, they would definitely fight me for custody. Given their financial power, I had no chance of winning. This family was hard-won for me, and I couldn't allow that to happen. I kept silent. Her mother-in-law seemed to sense something and sighed after a long while. "I don't want to interfere in your matters with Victoria, but this child..." She looked at me and said, "The doctor mentioned that as long as the adult is safe, the baby will be fine. When Victoria wakes up, she will definitely keep the baby. We hope the child can grow up in a complete family." I frowned and replied, "Auntie, the most important thing now is whether Victoria can wake up." My mother-in-law sighed and said, "Sincere, it's Victoria who let you down, but she truly loves you. She was just spoiled and didn't know how to express herself." Before leaving, she patted my shoulder and said, "Rest assured, no matter what, the Liu family will protect you. This is also what Victoria wants to see the most." I nodded. After she left, it was just Victoria and me. Looking at her tightly closed eyes, I felt a bit of heartache. But when I thought about the baby, I became a little angry. "Victoria, I remember you said you didn't want this baby. If you want to abort the baby after waking up, then I hope you never wake up." After I finished, there was no response from her. I couldn't help but smile bitterly and said, "Aren't you trying to atone? Aren't you trying to make things right? Lying here like this, are you trying to be lazy? I know you can't hear me, but what my mother-in-law said earlier had a big impact on me. I needed someone to vent to. Victoria, since you don't like kids, when you wake up and give birth to her, I'll take care of the baby myself. But the child will still call you Mom. You are her biological mother. Even if we divorce, we can still coexist peacefully. But I won't end up alone. Maybe soon your child will call someone else Mom." I said this deliberately to provoke her. "I won't remarry, maybe I'll date, but I won't get married again." I said, "What do you think of Emma? She has liked me for so many years and saved my life. She might be a great stepmom." Before I finished, Victoria's fingers suddenly twitched, but only slightly. She didn't wake up. I was disappointed. "Victoria, I'm not joking. If you don't wake up soon, I really..." Before I finished, Victoria's eyelids suddenly fluttered. This time I really saw it. It wasn't an illusion. "Doctor!" I was very excited and quickly called Sophie. Sophie is Victoria's good friend. She had been staying at the hospital since Victoria had an accident. She and Victoria's attending doctor hurried over. After an examination, Sophie told me with some delight she should wake up soon. "Don't worry." I nodded and thanked her. Sophie intended to leave but turned back after a while and looked at me saying, "I'm sorry about before. Be brother-in-law. She used to only call me Mr. G." Sophie looked apologetic. She said, "I used to think you weren't good enough for Victoria, but this is between you two. As long as Victoria likes you, I shouldn't have been so aggressive." I said, "It's all in the past." I showed no expression and didn't feel much about her apology because I never really considered her a friend. To me, she was just an acquaintance. Sophie saw my indifferent reaction and didn't say much more, excusing herself and leaving. I sat by the bed waiting for Victoria to wake up. Around midnight, drowsiness hit. I lay by the bed, holding her hand. The hospital was a bit cold at night. Just as I was about to wake up and find a blanket, I felt warmth on my shoulder. Startled, I quickly opened my eyes to see Victoria covering me with a blanket. "You woke up?" I was overjoyed and grabbed her hand tightly, about to call the doctor. While waiting for the doctor, Victoria gently hugged me and whispered in my ear, "Don't let my child call someone else Mom." Her voice was muffled. She had just woken up and hurriedly said this. I was both angry and amused. I pushed her away and said, "Let's check your head first." Victoria finally woke up. The Liu family was naturally very happy. At the same time, the Yi family was also relieved. If something had really happened to Victoria, they would have had to kill Ethan to atone. Of course, that's an exaggeration, but for the declining Yi family with many offspring, cutting off their financial support is like killing their parents. As long as they could appease the Liu family, they would do anything. Even though Victoria woke up, the relationship between the Yi and Liu families could never return to what it once was. It was completely broken. After this incident, the relationship between Victoria and me became delicate. We used to argue a lot, but never thought of separating. Later, because she said she didn't want children and would abort if she got pregnant, I thought about ending my life. After she woke up, she took me to a psychologist for a comprehensive counseling session to figure out the problem. But when she found out the reason, the extreme regret on her face is still vivid in my memory. She said, "Sincere, those were just angry words. How could I not want our child?" She seemed very scared and held me tightly. She said, "Back then you said as long as I was pregnant I could ignore Ethan. No matter how much you argue with me, I just think you're jealous. A little coaxing would suffice. I know I did something wrong, but I always thought I had my reasons. I just wanted you to understand me without considering your feelings. When you said those things, I thought you were using the child as a bargaining chip, so I got really angry and said those harsh words. But I never meant them. I understand what she meant. I have said many hurtful things before, but that time she really broke my heart. Sincere, give me a chance." Victoria's voice was extremely low. She said, "I can't be without you or this child. Watch how I behave, okay? If we continue like this, you can leave me, and I won't have any complaints. Sincere, I want to try again. I love you so much. We were so in love once. I can't let go so easily." How could I be willing to let go? But I was really scared to try again. What she said was all true. We had a lot of misunderstandings, but no matter how many, the hurt I experienced was real. She said, "I was hurt too." Victoria cupped my face and said, "We're like two porcupines, but I'm willing to put away my quills." My mind was a mess, and I didn't respond right away. Victoria wasn't in a hurry either. She only showed concern and care within appropriate boundaries and never overstepped. She had just woken up. I told her not to worry too much about me and to take good care of herself and the baby. However, she always knew everything about me, no matter how trivial. I thought she was just obsessed with giving the child a complete family. But later I realized that during our marriage, it wasn't just me who was petty. She was too. After we got married, I never felt secure, so I did many things that annoyed her. I said, "I always thought the beginning of our relationship wasn't that honorable. You only stayed with me because of an accident. There are countless outstanding men out there. I worried that after seeing them you'd think I'm nothing special." One time I couldn't help but speak my mind. "Victoria, our status is too unequal." I couldn't adjust my mindset back then, so I proposed divorce. It wasn't just your fault. I had my own issues. I didn't want to let myself go any further. When I mentioned that, Victoria was also filled with regret. She said, "Sincere, I never thought about looking at other men. I liked you a long time ago, but never found the opportunity. You thought that day was an accident, but have you considered that even if I were drunk, I wouldn't let someone I didn't like stay by my side?" I was surprised and interrupted her. "What do you mean? You weren't drunk that day." Because of this, I always felt guilty. She seemed so drunk that day, barely recognizing anyone. But I was only slightly tipsy and quite clear-headed. In retrospect, I took advantage of the situation. But when she said that, the shadow in my heart instantly disappeared. I said, "Victoria, if you were sober, why didn't you say so earlier? I always thought I took advantage of you." Victoria smiled apologetically and said, "Sincere, I was just in my early 20s then. I didn't want to be rejected, so I could only test you in that way. But I wouldn't do that now." I couldn't help but blame her. If you had said so earlier, I wouldn't have been so insecure and done those foolish things. She put my hand on her chest and said, "Yes, I was foolish too. I clearly liked you, but I always pretended not to care, just hoping to see you revolve around me. I knew you didn't like Ethan, but I thought you were overreacting instead of resolving the conflict with Grandpa. Sincere, I made many mistakes and had many misunderstandings. If you hadn't lost your memory, I wouldn't have realized how excessive I was. That day, we talked for a long time, trying to clear up all the past misunderstandings. Unconsciously, I fell asleep. By then, she was over 6 months pregnant, her belly round and full. I gently lifted her from behind and placed her softly on the bed. Victoria woke up and instinctively wrapped her arms around my neck. "Thank you," she whispered. Victoria looked deeply into my eyes and suddenly tilted her head up to kiss my lips. I didn't say anything, just felt it quietly. I didn't know how long it had been when she finally let go. My face felt a little warm, and I heard her hoarse voice in my ear. "Sincere, can we not get a divorce?" I suddenly laughed. I thought, given how invested she was just now, she would at least make some requests suited to the atmosphere. But she only wanted not to divorce me. Seeing me laugh, Victoria was a bit unhappy but didn't dare to say it outright. She gently scratched me and said, "Don't laugh. Answer my question." I gradually stopped laughing, my face expressionless. Victoria panicked again. She said, "You don't have to answer my question. It's fine as it is now." I understood her panic and sighed softly, gently stroking her cheek. "Victoria, let me think about it a bit more, okay?" Although the misunderstanding between us had been cleared up, it wasn't easy to rebuild trust, especially for a couple like us who had been through so much hardship. Even though we hadn't crossed any major lines, the scars were still there. Rebuilding trust would take a long time. She focused on nurturing the baby, and for the sake of the little one, I was more forgiving towards Victoria because she was indeed suffering. This child was causing her a lot of discomfort, but she had always been strong-willed. I felt a bit heartbroken after all. It's my child too. The baby was born soon, and time flew by. I had mentally prepared myself. If Victoria turned out to be a good mother, I would be pleased. But if she didn't meet my expectations, I could leave her decisively. Sure enough, Victoria never let me down. One day she put the baby to sleep and turned back to the bedroom, seeing me leaning against the door, smiling at her. Victoria walked softly to me. "What's wrong?" I said. "Nothing, it's just that it feels like I haven't seen your cold side for a long time." Victoria sighed with relief and then found it amusing. She wrapped her arms around my waist and said, "Those are dark times, can we not bring them up again?" "Why can't we bring them up?" I laughed. "But I still like the old cold version of you. You must have looked beautiful changing diapers with a cold face." Victoria knew I was teasing her and chased me into the bedroom with a stern face. When she finally pounced on me, I heard her say, "Honey, did I pass the test?" I chuckled and said, "You passed. But there's a probation period." She asked, "How long is the probation period?" I replied, "A lifetime, I suppose."